this bonus episode, I am chatting about my first time seeing the metalcore band Spiritbox at Irving Plaza in New York City.
Welcome to the Eat, Sleep, Breathe Music podcast, where we talk all things music. I'm your host, Jeanette Kimsel, blogger and music enthusiast. Let's get started with today's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Eat, Sleep, Breathe Music podcast. I'm your host, Jeanette Kimsel. For those of you just joining us, this is a podcast where I talk about different musicians and how their music affects me, and then I play a track of theirs for you to listen to, so you can check it out and form your own opinion as well. But today I'm doing something a little different. I'm doing a bonus episode of sorts. This is a review, or just my thoughts maybe on seeing the Canadian metalcore band Box. So I saw them back in April 30th at Irving Plaza in New York City, and I did a audio podcast, but I thought it would be fun to do a video podcast as well. And so, I don't know if you've been to Irving Plaza lately, but they did a lot of reconfiguring of their venue that may or may not appeal to some people. The venue itself is a really great place to see bands. It's one of those venues that's bigger, but yet still very intimate. And there's a large general admission standing room, but yet a balcony overhead. And I was just curious how many people it held. And I looked online and it was actually only 1,100, which I feel like I'm kind of surprised by, because I would have pegged it for a lot more, maybe at least 3,000, maybe, I don't know. The upstairs was always good. If you could get there early, you could snag a space and right by the railing and look over, and it's a great place to be if you are able to get there early. And then a few years ago, they started doing all these upgrades, and that turned, the closer balcony areas into VIP. And I remember, I think I had gotten tickets for that show, that area in a show. And I just remember I felt like I was totally encroaching on the sound booth person in the space. And I felt like there was literally maybe 2 feet between me and the sound person. And it was so funny. The thing I notice now with venues, and it seems to be becoming a thing across different venues, they're putting in seats and tables, which is really the best thing ever, because, I don't know if it's just me, I'm getting old, or if I really like having a good seat with a nice view. I just want to sit down. I had first seen this setup at the Fillmore in Philly. And I also noticed Terminal 5 now is doing this for their shows. And it's a really great way for venues to upcharge people who would like to have the option to sit. And Irving Plaza actually has these new sections in the balcony. They have round tables right next to the sound booth, and they're kind of straight in front of the stage. So it's a really great view because you're elevated and you're directly in front of the stage. And then behind that, they have these high top tables with bar stools. And that's probably great too, because it's a little bit elevated and it's right in front of the stage. And then to the left, they have this thing called a loft, and it's basically just a standing area in the balcony on the side. And, I was really curious, how many tickets they were selling for this section, because you can't really cram a bunch of people in there because nobody's gonna be able to see. You get there early and you're yeah, I got a spot, but then everyone else is totally screwed. And if someone's tall standing in front of you, you're not gonna be able to see. So this particular show was sold out. And I say that using quotation marks because there were a bunch of tickets selling online. They were being resold for exorbitant amount of prices. And now, I wouldn't mind paying if I knew a large chunk of the money was going to the band. And I bet Ticketmaster is getting all the money because they own all the ticketing companies. They're getting all these fees. And then whatever the face value was of the ticket, that's the only part that's going to the band. I was just kind of it's ridiculous. But we did want to get a good spot, and we were really hoping to get in the high-rise section because they weren't too expensive. I think they were maybe $100 with fees. And the loft section was $300, which I was I couldn't believe that they were charging $300 considering there were not even any seats. We were hoping that ticket prices would go down, and they did, which was awesome. We were wondering how low the prices would go, if they would actually go back to the value of the ticket when it was originally sold. And we kept waiting and waiting, but we waited too long, of course. It's you wait and then you wait and then you're crap, I waited too long. We did wind up going with the loft section. They were under $100 even with the fees. So that was pretty exciting considering it's really hard to get concert tickets for less than $100 these days. We made our way into the city and it was a real rainy day, but luckily by the time we got there, the rain was starting to taper off. Unfortunately, we didn't get there in time to see the first band, and they were called Intervals, but we did get a chance to see the second opening act, After the Burial. And I had not heard them or their music, and I don't really know much about metal, and it, if it wasn't for my husband, I probably wouldn't know any of this stuff. Like, he is like a huge Spiritbox fan, and he was excited to hear After the Burial, and he's been so obsessed with them for like months and months and months, and he was just so excited that we were able to go see them live. And especially because this band is from Canada, they may not get to tour as often as some other bands, so he was so excited. And it was kind of awesome because it kind of really opened up my eyes to metal music and what Spiritbox has to offer. But going back to After the Burial, they're from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they have been described as progressive metal, metalcore, deathcore, and gent. I was looking them up on Wikipedia after the show, and the band had been around since about 2004. They've had some lineup changes, and the remaining founding member is guitarist Trent Halfdahl, and his singer, he said he's been in the band for about 13 years. His name is Anthony Notaromoso, and please forgive me if I'm pronouncing any of these names incorrectly. A really great stage presence. The singer seemed so genuinely happy to be up there. They were talking about COVID, and they didn't know what was going to happen with their music and their band, and they were just so thankful for being back up on stage. And I felt really bad because I'm looking at the stage, and he had such a small little space to work with, a drum set on the stage in front of another drum set that was already on for the headlining band. So he was left with just 2 feet of room to move around, and it just looked so tight. He even mentioned this at one point. That's why I think it stood out in my mind. The thing that was cool about his performance was that there was just so much positivity in the night. Even though there was this mosh pit and people were getting aggressive and dancing, they were still so respectful and very nice to each other. Nobody was a jerk. Somebody lost their shoes at one point, and they didn't stop the music, but they were making comments like, oh, somebody keeps losing their shoes. And they had the lights, on, people in the crowd had little flashlights that they were like, oh, well, if somebody lost something, here's your stuff. And it was just a cool, positive atmosphere. The other thing I liked was how the singer had explained the meaning of his songs before going into each song. And that was cool. It's really great for people who this may be the first time they're seeing them. They can kind of get a really good sense of who they are and what they're about. They had one song where he went into the influence of the song, and it was called Death Keeps Us From Living. The message behind that music was very powerful. It was showing how to keep living after you're dealing with so much loss in your life. I just thought it was a nice touch because you see bands and they don't say anything and they have no interaction with the crowd. It can make the performance kind of flat. So the fact that they were really interacting with the crowd, I always appreciate that from bands. It's everyone's there together and enjoying the moment. If After the Burial is a band that appeals to you, you can learn more about them at their official website, aftertheburial.com. You can also like and follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the handle After the Burial. And before I go into the Spiritbox show review, feelings, my whole thoughts on the thing, a brief overview of the headlining band. Spiritbox, they are a Canadian band, and they were formed in 2017 by husband and wife Courtney LaPlante, vocalist, and Michael Stringer, guitarist. They also have Zev Rose, drummer, and then on bass is Josh Gilbert, and he's the newest addition to the band, rounding out the lineup in 2023. And they get their name from a device that is capable of communicating with the dead. There's a quote on their website that really aligns with the band's performance on Sunday night. There's a gleeful sense of paranormal running through all the band do, but despite their celestial stylings, this is a group of artists who are very much brimming with life and creating something remarkable with their music. And I couldn't agree more. They played their hearts out for an hour and 8 minutes. The set was filled with songs off their self-titled album, Rotoscope, and a majority of their last release, Eternal Blue. Their set kicked off at 9:20, and with the venue dropping all to black, and then we started to hear Beyonce's All Up in Your Mind, and it was so dark you really couldn't see the band at all, but they started coming out with like these intricate notes of Sun Killer. And I always like to check out Setlist FM to see if the setlist is the same as the actual show. It is all user generated. I find a lot of times it is pretty on par with what's actually being played. So I had the set list on my phone and I was kind of going song by song. I know some people don't really like knowing what the set list is going to, they want to be surprised, but I really like following along with Setlist FM. As I said, the show started with the hauntingly beautiful song Sun Killer. Here's a little clip of the beginning. You can hear the crowd screaming. And then among the screams, you could hear the initial guitar riffs kicking off the song. And then you hear the bass start to pick up against the light vocal melodies. Next, kick in searing guitar sounds to the crowd's delight. And then finally, we're hit with the vocals. And then the song goes on for about another 2 minutes, and then the music gets real quiet again, and the crowd starts singing the bridge on cue. And it's just so, you just get chills listening to this. And then, you know, the instruments cut in for a bit. So they actually were behind this screen. It was almost like plastic wrap. And then they had on the screen the lyrics. And then after that happened, vocalist LaPlante just kind of burst into that the screaming portion of the song. Is just loving it. And then she does a little more and then the song ends. What an epic way to start the show, right? I mentioned before about that clear plastic wrap. In addition to the lyrics that were being played, they had all these light show going on in front of them. It reminded me of Saran wrap. It was just this barrier that projected these images onto this really cool light show. It was in front of them instead of behind them, which is neat because I don't really ever recall seeing anything like this where, normally you just have a background or a backdrop with different things being shown on it, but this was really something neat. They had it up for about 2 songs and then took it down, which I was glad. It would have been kind of a bummer just to have that barrier up the whole time, preventing you from really enjoying the show. Overall, I was really impressed with their performance. I thought all the songs were stellar and really great. Personally, I am more into the screaming/singing songs. I like the vocal aspect of the music, and I'm not 100% into the screaming stuff. I don't know if I could handle a whole set of just screaming. Although after the burial, they're all screaming, not really any singing in their music, and I thought it was pretty cool. So maybe I could. Normally, I like the dichotomy of the singing and the screaming. And it was really hard to find like favorite tracks among the whole show because I really enjoyed such a large portion of it. And the ones that I think stood out were Hurt You. Yellow Jacket. Rule of Nines. Circle with me. And The Void. then they also did a cover of No Doubt's Hella Good, which is cool because it was this heavy feeling vibe to it. It was more metal than regular No Doubt version. It was pretty neat. They parlayed that song into their track Rotoscope, and that was just a really cool mixture of the two songs. Rotoscope was fun. I was really getting a lot of 90s Garbage, that band Garbage vibe from that song, so that was cool.
I didn't say the ass-shaking portion of the show was done, and it's mandatory.
Their set consisted about 10 tracks, and then they came out and they said they weren't doing like a formal encore. They said, it would have been too much to go back down into their janitor's closet and come back out. They're like, we're all adults and we're just going to play the songs we like to play. I kind of like that. I think it saves time. You know what's going to happen, and it seems like that's a thing now with bands. So I don't know if Holy Roller was actually the last song of the set before the encore. It was that or the song before that, the Mara Effect Part 3. They were saying that they had 4 songs left. Regardless of that, they played 14 songs total. Listening to that, at least to me, you hear why the song got so popular. It's got this really infectious beginning, and then it jumps into this like screaming part, and it's so mesmerizing. And as I said before, I think the screaming and the singing is just a really cool combination. If you do know the band, you would probably know them from that song, Holy Roller. And here's a clip.
Into life, take my body instead. Holy
Listening to that, at least to me, you hear why the song got so popular. It's got this really infectious beginning, and then it jumps into this like screaming part, and it's so mesmerizing. And then after that, they brought the show down and got mellow with their music. They said that the rest of the show would be more slow tunes, and it was just kind of time to relax. And there was just so much appreciation and happiness from the band. The last 3 songs they played were Hysteria, constant. The title track Eternal Blue. I love the sentiment that was talked about at the end of the show, where vocalist LaPlante was saying there's a place for everyone to come together and enjoy the moment and the music, and that's what the song Eternal Blue is all about. And I just thought it was a really nice way to end the show. And here's a clip.
Tell you that you don't belong in the space that you want to be. This is your space. This is your house. That's what this song's about. It's called Eternal Blue.
So that was my experience at the Spiritbox show. My husband had been playing their music for months and months, and I could appreciate the music, but then seeing it live, you just get so much more. If you are on the fence about metal music, I would say give Spiritbox a try and you may just like it. You know, I definitely think they have a lot of things that appeal to a wider audience. Someone who is into lovely vocals and screamo. It's got a lot of things going for it. I also saw that they are going on tour with Shinedown and Papa Roach, so there's a lot of chances to see them live, which is pretty awesome. And if you do want more information on Spiritbox, you can check out their website, www.spiritbox.com. You can also like and follow them on Facebook and Instagram at the handle Spiritbox Official. On TikTok and Twitter, they're at the handle Spiritbox Band. If you're looking for more new music, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you get the latest updates on our artist features. You can also find more music features on our website at www.eatsleepbreathemusic.com. That is EATSLEEPBREATHEMUSIC.com. As always, thanks for watching. See you in the next episode.